Portland, Oregon. What? Coming in hot, and I'm representing Oregon via Massachusetts. Oh, this is so exciting.
Charlie. Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library, and I'm really thrilled to be here with Kate Spencer, who we will talk about a lot of stuff and we'll laugh a lot tonight. But before I get to all of that laughter, I do want to say a couple things. One is I would like to thank the Friends of the Ashland Library who support all of our programming. I would also like to thank these libraries who have partnered with us on this program, because as I always say, when libraries come together, we make magic. So we welcome the patrons from Ashland, of course, but also Clinton, Lowell, Linfield, Manchester, Marlborough, Northampton, Spencer, and Tewksbury. So welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here. I also want to say that you can buy signed books by Bookplate from Kate from Bank Square Books, and I will put a link to that in the chat, and you can order from this for this program for the next couple of days. Because as I also say, signed books are like gold. So a little bit about Kate, because we're going to be talking, she's going to be telling us all about her, but she is an amazing, amazing writer, but she's also a podcaster and a memoirist. And her book from last year, In a New York Minute, is fantastic. If you have not read it, it's funny, it's heartfelt, it's romantic, it's beautiful. So I really think you should read it. So I met Kate at the Boston Book Festival last year, and she was wonderful. She really stood out on her panel, and I'm so glad that she agreed to talk to us today. So welcome, Kate.
Wow, thank you for such a kind endorsement. I honestly got a little teary-eyed hearing all the Massachusetts libraries, because I grew up in Massachusetts and I miss Massachusetts. So while I'm thrilled there seem to be people from everywhere, like, you know, Massachusetts just kind of has my heart.
Well, it certainly has ours too. I did want to say that you put hi all in the chat to just the host and panelists. So
whoops, that would be the two of us.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's awesome, but nobody else can see you.
I'm gonna try this again.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so, and I did forget to say that this is a Q&A, so feel free, just like Sandy did, to put your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, because that's easier for me to follow. But please feel free to chat with each other, do emojis, whatever you need in the chat. So, Kate, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you want us to know, other than that you grew up in Massachusetts?
Oh gosh, sure. What do you need to know about me? I am left-handed. I feel like that's very important for people to know. I am a writer and a podcaster. That is my professional work. And it's a real honor to get to do both. I have spent many years as a writer in varying positions. I come from a comedy background. So in the early aughts, I trained and taught at the Upright Citizens Brigade long-form improv theater in New York City. And I think that has really fueled and informed my style of writing romance, because I come from this kind of brain of humor and finding, you know, unique moments in everyday life. So I think a lot of that training is evident, at least for me, in my writing. But I worked at VH1 for many years. I managed a lot of their digital properties. I became a producer and an on-air host. So I have covered every red carpet imaginable. I have met many celebrities and had a lot of weird experiences there. And I got into romance first as a reader for many years, and always knew I wanted to write fiction. And it just took a lot of drafts, a lot of abandoned drafts, and a lot of tries to really finally come up with something that I felt could maybe make it onto a library bookshelf someday.
Well, we have your books, a couple of copies on our shelves, and they're never on our shelves because they're always out.
Oh, wow, that's very flattering.
Well, they're wonderful. So let's go back a little bit though.
Sure.
Let's go all the way back. Like when you were a kid, did you know that you were going to be an entertainer, a writer, like in the arts?
No, I actually think I'm one of those people who never had a thing. You know how there are some kids who you're like, oh, child plays soccer 10 times a week and they're on like 50 teams. I was a person who never really had a true outlet that I kind of could claim as my own. Although a lot of my interests and pursuits were very creative, I feel like I was always kind of exploring or trying to find something. But what I was a avid reader, and that and I did write. I loved English class. I loved creative writing. I loved just making stuff up and being kind of a ham and hogging attention in my family. So I do think that's probably all connected. But I was a huge reader, and it's a fun thing to talk about now. You know, I'm in my mid 40s or early 40s, and I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. And like when I was their age, I was like taking my mom's Stephen King books and reading them, you know, and now I'm like, would I let my 12-year-old read it? I don't know. But boy, I was reading, you know, I was just reading everything. I read every Babysitter's Club books. I even have some of my old Babysitter's Club books on my bookshelf. Like I would read anything you put in front of me. I just loved stories. And I always have loved romance. Like always, that is the thing I look for in any story. Oftentimes when there's not a romance, I'm like wanting a romance to happen always.
So I'll tell you a little bit about myself too, is that I actually wrote a Nancy Drew book when I was a kid that wasn't romance. Like Ned and Nancy got together. So of course,
right?
Right?
Of course.
Yeah. So I get that. But what about, were you like a class clown? Did you have like these different aspects of yourself?
Yes. Yes, I was definitely, you know, I was a shy kid in elementary school, and I struggled with a lot of self-esteem, which is, you know, kind of tied in with being neurodivergent. And I think when I started an all-girls school in 6th grade, I really found myself, and I found teachers who got me. And I definitely always enjoyed performing, making my friends laugh. You know, I have always been a little bit of that person. Yes. Yes. I could say class clown, not all the time. Sometimes I was also very into student government. I love public speaking. I feel comfortable talking to people. And I'm interested in other people. I think that comes with being a reporter and an interviewer. Like I'm very curious about, you know, everyone's life and what drives them and what moves them. So that all kind of, I think that also all ties in. It all kind of builds, you know?
I'm curious about the fact that you said that you're neurodivergent, and yet you're so not what people stereotype as neurodivergent. And I wonder if you think that having a different way of thinking, it helped you become who you are.
Yes. I mean, I only am recently ADHD diagnosed. I've been diagnosed with OCD and generalized anxiety disorder for many years. And I have always known there was something different in the way that my brain worked. And it was evident in lots of things that came up in my life. But whatever the timing, me being a high achieving girl, I don't know, never really got diagnosed. So it's only been a few years that I've really begun to truly understand what that means. And I'm now able to look back on myself and my life through this lens of understanding ADD. And I think it's interesting when you kind of get these diagnoses later in life, there's a lot of grief, anger, you know, you look back on things and wonder why people missed it, or you have these moments in childhood of shame or guilt or whatever, and now you can understand what was going on. But I do think what you mentioned on the other side of things is that it definitely has given, you know, it's given me also a lot of gifts and a lot of strengths that I might not have had if my life had proceeded in any other way, or if I had been anybody else. So yeah, I think it's a huge part of who I am, and probably has allowed me to do the work that I do. And I like thinking about it in that terms, because sometimes I do get kind of bogged down in the frustration side of things.
Well, you're certainly an example to people that you can do anything, basically. whatever your
I
challenges are.
as long as I put it in a Google Calendar, then I can do anything. Because if I don't put something in, write it down immediately, it's lost forever and from my brain. And that is something I have really had to learn. I've had to really start to learn about myself, and it's not always fun or comfortable.
Right. Well, and the tools it takes to keep you on track, which we all have,
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So going back to, because I just got totally diverted by that. When you first started out, were you more in the entertainment field, or were you writing then, or how did you start out?
I started out by writing my own blog in like 2003 and writing about pop culture. I was very, it was kind of the time when sites like Gawker were very big. This was before Twitter existed. Like, it was just a different time on the internet. And a few things kind of happened for me where I was kind of freelance, a production assistant, and trying to, write comedy and performing comedy. And when my mom got diagnosed with cancer, she got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So it was, terminal from the start. And I moved home, quit the work I was doing, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways. And that I had been doing an internship at a free newspaper as a writer with their entertainment group, and it just kind of, it helped me focus. And after she died, I had no job, I had no money, I had credit card debt. It was not a great time, but I randomly applied for this job writing for VH1. It was on Craigslist, and I got the job. And I had written freelance a little bit for New York Magazine, and I had some clips on like the website College Humor, but it was like a real great moment of luck and fate and timing. And I got this job at VH1, like posting headlines on their website, like a very weird kind of writing blog posts type of job. And that just evolved. I was there for, I think, like 7 years working for them, 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So I know that, well, actually, before I get to that, I would like to know if there's any celebrity stories you can tell us.
Oh my gosh. I mean, so many. I've done so many celebrity interviews. There's one that recently like didn't go viral, but it was all over TikTok because I interviewed Pedro Pascal, who is the Mandalorian, and he's in Game of Thrones, and he's now a very big star. And this was 10 years ago. And we played a game. I forget which game, like Connect Four. We played a board game, and I interviewed him, and he was very flirty and sexy, and now he's this like beloved internet figure. And that interview got discovered again, and it was funny to kind of reflect on it. He was one of the nicest people I've ever interviewed. I've done a lot of like just weird red carpets where like all of a sudden, you're face to face with like George Clooney, and you have 2 minutes to try to ask him a question that's gonna elicit a good soundbite that you're then going to be able to run on TV. So it's this kind of weird, high pressure, but also tedious job. I interviewed Kristen Stewart in a castle in England. That was very exciting. Got to go to the Oscars, Grammys. It was wild. It was really fun. Mm-hmm. And some people, most like 99% of every person I interviewed was so nice. And then there's like always like one person who's weird and mean, but most of them were like just doing their jobs and very lovely.
Like Hugh Grant at the Oscars.
That was a weird one. I know. I tried to watch that through the lens of like, what's going on here? Why is he react? Like that interviewer, she held it together because that was tough. Yeah, it's tough.
I can't imagine being a celebrity and having like, people wanting to get you all the time. You're like, how, tell me something that not everybody knows. So I won't dig on that too much, but I really do think that that's interesting that you went from doing that and continue to do that, but also started, publishing. So let's dig into a little bit about, obviously your first book was The Dead Moms
Sure.
Club, a memoir of your experience with your mom. And was that something that that was in your heart before, and then you did it because she had
Yes.
cancer?
Oh, no, I knew when my mom died, I wanted to write a book about grief because there was not a lot of accessible literature when I went looking for books. There was Motherless Daughters, which is, I don't know if anyone's familiar, but it's kind of an organization that's also a book. But they kind of are more specifically for teenage, like girls and young adults who have lost their mothers. And I lost my mom at 27. So I was like an adult, but felt like I was a child. And it was a lot of kind of more mature grief books that felt very self-helpy. And then I did find some memoirs, but those were also very heavy. I don't know. I just was looking for something and I hadn't found it. And so I just knew, and I also knew I just needed to get out the grief that was just kind of stuck. It was stuck. And anytime I would talk about it, people would respond. I published some essays with other outlets online like BuzzFeed um, and people would always respond. Like grief is such a universal experience that we still just don't talk about. And I think in the last 5 years, that has changed a lot. And I feel very privileged that I'm in kind of this community with other grief writers. I've gotten to know some really amazing people. But yeah, I always kind of had that book in me and wanted to write it and just needed to wait, I think, until I was in a place where I could do it without totally crumbling. I did spend a lot of time like typing and weeping. I wouldn't write about it again, but it's been really meaningful. Most people who read it respond. Like I hear from so many people who somehow find this book and it has helped them or just feels, they feel seen, I think. And that's the other thing is, I also had one singular experience, right? Like when we lose a parent, I only lost my mom. I had a good relationship with my mom. I was privileged in the fact that, like my dad was there and it could financially, support my mom's hospital bills. Like there's a lot of factors that go into all these things. And no experience is the same. So I try to be cognizant of that in the book. And also when I talk about my own experience. But even so, like, even though loss is so different, I do think there is always a connection. I meet people who've lost siblings or, spouses or brothers or kids, all sorts of different people in their life. And there always is kind of a spark of understanding, even though the experience of loss is so different. I could never compare losing my mother to losing a child. I have no idea what that experience is like and wouldn't want to try to claim it or try to claim any understanding. But that's a long answer, but it's been a really meaningful, I feel very honored that I got to be a person just who got to speak about that experience.
Did it surprise you that that was the book that came out of you?
No, I knew it was in there and I had tried to write like I wrote fan fiction for a while, and then I tried to write kind of like a celebrity romance and I also didn't really understand the structure of fiction. And so I had written so much kind of personal essay and had done so much in that space that I think it was all here. And also, to be honest, I personally found memoir easier than fiction because I'm writing about my own life. I didn't have to like figure out who these people were. I knew who they were. I mean, it also makes it much trickier in a lot of ways because you're writing about an experience that I shared with my brother and my dad and my mom's siblings. And, it's all tricky, but no, that book was just kind of in me.
Mhm. And one of the things I've read the most about that book is that it intertwined humor, which obviously
Yeah.
is sort of a go-to for you. But how do you do that? Like, how do you bring humor in an accessible way to such a difficult topic?
Well, I think that one thing we never really talk about culturally is how there are very funny moments in some of the darkest times of our lives. Like when my brother and I both quit our jobs and moved home to live at our parents' house when our mom got sick. And so, which is such a gift. And we had some like big laughs and big laughs over like very dark things. Like my mom also, my family comes from a place of humor that tends to be like our coping mechanism. So for better or for worse, we have a lot of it. And my mom had like a really great sense of humor and could joke about dark things, which I really like. Because sometimes that's the only way to get through. You are in the most, if someone has a terminal illness, I mean, you are seeing some gnarly, awful things that if you haven't been exposed to it before, I did not know. I was extremely naive about what it meant to have cancer. So for me, I just think like there are so many humorous moments in the weirdest times, and you have to be like, that's the only way I am able to survive them. And I think that has been a very unifying experience when I talk to other people about grief. I'm on a, I'm talking every day with some friends about it. And like, sometimes the stories are just like, it's hilarious and very sad and awful, but it's still funny.
Mhm. Well, I mean, isn't that how humans sort of connect with each other too, is to find something in
Yeah.
the brain that they can associate with that doesn't break you?
Oh, that's such a beautiful way of putting it. Yes. I don't think I've ever really thought about it that way, but yeah, because if you don't laugh, you're right. It will destroy you. And sometimes, you laugh and still get destroyed. I mean, I don't want to
Yeah.
make light of how hard life can be sometimes. But for me, like humor has just always been a way of getting to a story. Also, like the starting point of a story. I don't know if that's just coming from learning improv for so many years, but that's what I always see is like, what's the weird situation, and then what's funny about it, and how do we kind of build from there?
Mhm. Well, that's a perfect segue into in a New York minute, I think, because
Thank you.
yes, and if I find that sentence about breaking in one of your next books or articles, I'm going to be like,
I will credit you.
okay,
I will give you, yes, don't worry. There will be a footnote. I'll make sure you're in there.
just remember my name's spelled with 2 E's.
Okay, deal.
Okay, so New York Minute obviously is a rom-com. It's a rom-com. It's a little bit different, obviously it's very different from Dead Moms Club. So where did that come from? Like, you were a reader, you're a comic, all of that stuff, but like after Dead Moms Club, how did you do this?
I mean, I love romance. So I was reading, that's all I was reading was romance. And I just knew in my soul that I wanted to write romance. And I think part of it is that I love the feeling the physical feeling I have reading a romance book. I feel so good. And and that was also while I was grieving the loss of my mother, romance really kind of stepped in and helped, was a big part of healing and just getting through life. So to the thought that I could offer that, it was like the most exciting thing in the world. But for me, it's just fun. I love coming up with these like ridiculous scenarios where you get to like, put these two people in and kind of like do this for a while until they fall in love. For me, that's just my absolute favorite thing to watch. I'm a huge rom-com movie watcher. I watched the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice movie as just like self-care kind of over and over again on my phone. So it just was, it's what I'm always seeking, like right now, for example, I don't know if you watch Succession on HBO, but the fourth season of Succession, it's a bunch of horrible people, and there's never going to be true romance on this show. And the whole time while I'm watching all these kind of like all bad people with each other, I'm like rooting for these characters to fall in love. So I'm always seeking romance in everything that I'm watching or consuming. It's just how I'm wired.
Mm-hmm.
I've been like that since I was a child. And it's how, I don't know why, just who I am.
Ned and Nancy. I mean, that's all I'm going to say.
Well, exactly. Like I would read these books. I'm looking just to get some examples of like kid books, but like I would read them and I would be like, why isn't it getting here. Like, I want that.
Right.
So your Ned and Nancy romance is what I was seeking as a kid.
We were talking about this before we opened up the webinar about the rise of romance especially during COVID. I mean, it was really big before, but during COVID, it just exploded. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your thoughts about why that has happened.
Yeah, I think it's like a perfect storm of readers, of outlets. I mean, I think you've got social media platforms that allow people to share. You've got these amazing communities of book talkers and bookstagrammers and booktubers and like people who are passionate, and like librarians. I mean, people who are passionate about reading and who are really sharing their recommendations. And there's this sense of community, right? So people are responding and sharing, and we all went online when we were all locked down. So I think people were making discoveries that way. And, you know, I think romance was already, especially, I can really speak to contemporary romance, it was already really having a moment. And then I just think it was the salve that people needed, you know? And there has also been kind of along the kind of rise of the genre, a really good conversation that's been ongoing about the way in which it's perceived, both in the literary communities and also just like the large community at large, and the way in which like things that are often geared toward, you know, primarily women are perceived as, you know, less than. So I think we're seeing that conversation and hearing different voices. And I also think it's been really important, and there's not enough movement has been made on this front, but the genre is diversifying. I think there's more to people are seeing themselves more in the genre. And, you know, again, I'm saying this as a white woman, a white straight woman. So it's like, I've always been able to see myself, but my hope is that, and what I am hearing from my peers and from friends who are not white, is that there is more representation. I mean, I think, you know, obviously there's like a buttloads more work in that area that needs to be done, but it's also a space that's like exploding with talent, like real, just incredible writers. And it's a really exciting, like it feels, you know, I read these books and all these authors, like their work pushes me to want to make better work. It's exciting. And I'm like so dorky around all these authors that I like am trying to befriend who write romance, because I love their work. I'm a big fan.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know I'm totally of the dork factor.
You know, that's the best kind. I think that's like when you're a dork about something, you're so passionate and like reverent about it. And it just is the best.
Yeah, for people here that are listening in, I sent many squeeing emails to Kate when she said that she was going to do this. So she knows.
That's so nice. And I was like, Ashland? Yes, like, please. I mean, I would have said yes if it was Ashland, Missouri also, but Massachusetts, I was like, I'm there. Route 9, here I come.
Well, I'm glad we got to you first.
Yes, thank you.
So actually, you mentioned Ashland. Let's see. Sandy asks, where in Massachusetts are you from?
Okay, so I was born and raised in Wellesley, Massachusetts, where my parents met. My dad went to college in Wellesley and met my mom at a party there, and they somehow ended up back there. And I moved around a little bit when I was younger, and then they landed back in Wellesley. So I was born at Newton Wellesley Hospital, and that's where I grew up, and that's where, you know, where my mom died. So, you know, I have mixed feelings about Wellesley. It's a beautiful place. It's a complex place. It's got a very challenging history. But I feel very lucky to have grown up there, and I'm a big Red Sox fan.
You kind of
Like,
have to be.
You know, as I'm saying this, I'm like, a Red Sox romance would be fun. That would be fun to write. I'm gonna just put that in the back burner. But yeah, that's where I grew up.
I'll have to send you another Kate author name who writes baseball romances.
Yes, I should start reading. I haven't read baseball romance, and I feel like I need to. I'm just gonna make a note because, like I said, I'll forget.
I know.
There we go.
Now I'm forgetting her last name. It is Kate something, but she writes baseball romance. So anybody here that knows Kate, somebody who writes baseball romance, put it in the chat. So follow up from Sandy is she just finished the book today. And are there any of the characters based on anyone you know?
Okay, so the book revolves around Franny's the main character, and she's got these two best friends, Cleo and Lola, and their personalities are not based on people I know, but the relationships are really based on my own personal friendships. And I actually dedicated the book to my husband, but also to two of my best friends who I lived with in Brooklyn when we were just out of college. I think the strength of their friendships, and also Hayes has really strong friendships as well, and that kind of like friends who really have your back, and love you for who you are, flaws and all, those people have really carried me through my life. I'm very lucky for that. So that was really, really inspired by my own friendships. And I don't think it started, like, as I was writing it, like really started to become clear that I was, writing from that kind of personal experience.
Mhm. I love that too, because, the romance is one thing, but there's love in all sorts of ways, and I think
Yeah.
that romance has done such a good job of showing that kind of love, like all kinds of love.
Yes.
Which I think
Totally.
in New York Minute does such a fab job of that too.
Thank you.
So Rosa says, you said earlier that you wanted drafts worthy of libraries, and it made her wonder what were some of the things or concepts in earlier drafts you might have edited or tossed out, the blooper reel.
Oh, you don't even want to know. It is so dark and rough in some of those drafts. I can't even tell you how different the story is from. When I had this idea, I wrote like a page and a half of just notes, and then I started working on the book. Franny worked at an art gallery, and like maybe Hayes was a customer. I'm not even sure they had their weird subway. I honestly don't know. It's the amount of revising that goes into a book blows my mind every time I do it. And then I start again and I forget. And then I'm like, I have a book coming out next year, and I've rewritten it 3 times in the last year. And I'm talking page 1 rewrites, and it has been hard. And then every time it's better, and you're like, oh gosh, this is why I do that. I do this. So yeah, I mean, that's just the process. And it's so weird because as readers, we get this finished thing, and it's like makes me chuckle because sometimes you can finish a book in like 4 hours. You just like rip through it and you're like, well, that was great. And it's like this book was somebody was sweating and crying over this book, and this book has gone through so many transformations, and it's a testament to the work that writers do, like that you don't see that, but it also just kind of like, now that I understand the process, it blows my mind every time.
And were there any scenes or parts that your editor was like, no, let's not leave that in there, it bulks it up, it's whatever, for whatever reason, and then you were like, did you fight for anything, was there anything that you would have liked to have in that didn't make it?
Let me think. No, the ending changed for the better. I mean, a lot of my editor is so wonderful, and she really helped me take the book that I sold to her and really make it, I feel like, a complete book. And so no, there was nothing there. There is something in my new book that for like every time she's like, I don't totally get it. And I'm like, no, please. And I think I've gotten it to a place where it fits. And I don't know why I'm like clinging to it so much. Like, it is true that sometimes you do have to kill your darlings, and that can be very sad. But no, this book in a New York Minute, I don't think there was anything that I really had to like, cling to that I didn't want to let go of. No, thankfully. And I have a really it's been a really collaborative experience with my editor and my agent as well. So that's, to have those people to work with has been really great.
I wonder if it's because, well, part of it might be because, or could be because it was your first fiction book that was put out.
Yes.
I wonder if like Nora Roberts gets edits, she's like, no.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, Nora Roberts, I feel like could hand in like, a bag of like donuts and they would be like, great, we'll figure out how to publish this, and I would probably read it and love it. I'll take it.
Yeah, I would read it too. And especially if they, packaged it as a JD Robb book. I mean, double the fun.
Yes.
So somebody asks, how important is it to you to craft the perfect first line or paragraph? Or is the perfect first chapter as a whole the goal?
Oh my goodness. I would say both are the goal. If you're really going for it. For me, the last line of the chapter is like, I get really obsessive about. And now I'm obsessive about it as a reader. Like I really notice what the last line of every chapter is. But for some reason, for me, that's the thing I want to kind of like have that keep, because you want somebody to want to keep going.
Mhm.
So gosh, that's a really good question. I don't know if I've ever thought about it other than I want everything to be as good as I can make it, which is will drive you, up a wall. But yeah, but for me, it's the last line of a chapter. That's where I kind of fixate.
Mhm. So I'm going to rip off that a little bit and ask you, what would perfect look to you? Like perfect is
Oh,
different for different people. So like for you, what is the perfect kind of line or kind of paragraph or kind of chapter?
oh my gosh, that's a really hard question.
I get paid a
A
lot.
perfect, yeah, good,
No,
yeah.
I'm a
This is
librarian.
really
I don't
trying.
get
You're
paid a lot.
stumping me. No, well, but you should, because this is a good one. I don't know if such a thing exists. I do. Oh my gosh. For me, the final line of a chapter, it's like someone tugging me. I want to be like tugged to the next chapter. And I can feel it when I have that as a reader. Like they've left something dangling, like they've left like a carrot or whatever the thing is that makes you
Mhm.
want to like reach in and keep going. And that to me is like what sells it, or what hooks me.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, there.
But I don't know what perfect looks like. I don't know if that even exists. I don't even know if I could describe it. You've stumped me.
Well, I think it's perception. Like what would be perfect to
Mhm.
you? It doesn't necessarily mean it's perfect to everybody. So like for you, what feels like a really good, like what do you, when you see the line, what do you like, if there's a line, I'm not sure how to express this, but like what's your reaction to the perfect line? Like are you like,
I know what you mean. I do know what you mean, where there's just a moment. Well, I think as a creator, when you write something and then you're like, oh my God, it's it's almost like an out of body experience where you kind of doesn't feel like you actually came up with it. It just kind of comes through you. I think people talk about that flow state a lot. And I don't have that uh for long chunks of time. I feel like as a writer, I am mostly in like an angry, like clawing state. It's not a lot of like euphoric bliss, but once in a while, you'll just write something or come up with an idea for a scene that you're like, this is the most perfect thing. How have I not known for months that this is what is supposed to happen? And the way I understand that is that you have to go through the months and months of like dragging your feet and hitting your head against the keyboard and all that stuff for the perfect thing to emerge. There's like this is a real yoga class saying, but there's like some proverb or something about like a lotus rising from the mud. And I feel like that can be used in writing all the time, because that's what it always is. It's like you feel like you're never gonna write again. You're writing the worst thing in the world, and then something just blooms. And
Mhm.
it's the best. It's the best feeling. And that's why you keep chasing that high as a writer, I think.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Actually, Francine says that she's an avid reader and she thinks that the end of the chapter does propel you to the next chapter and to the end of the book. So that's a really,
Yes.
that's how she feels.
I like a strong chapter end that keeps you hooked.
Yeah. Well, without having a cliffhanger, maybe.
Yes, I don't like unresolved in chapters. Yes, at the end of a book, I have to have everything tied up, or else I'm going to be mad.
Yeah.
But then the writer did their job. Like, it's great. I think hating a book is such a great feeling because, like, the writer made you feel something. You don't always have to like a book for that to mean that the writer did their job. I would rather have somebody hate my work than be bored and like put it down.
Mm, been there, and I totally get
Right?
that. So Jennifer says, I was lucky enough to have been part of your pre-read group. I would love to know how it felt to
Oh,
receive that copied back with everyone's messages.
I think this is it. I think I have a couple of them. So what Jennifer is talking about, oh gosh, sorry. There's so much stuff at my desk.
I'm just glad you were
People
wearing
wrote
pants.
oh, that's true. I know. Me too. People wrote sweet notes in these arcs that I sent out to read, and it was really moving to me. Like, I loved it. It felt amazing, and I'm going to try to do it again. And I would probably let there be a longer time period. So we did kind of a traveling arc thing that some other authors have done. Specifically, Abby Jimenez is the author that I know of who has done this, where when she gets arcs of her book, she has a like a reader Facebook group, and you create a Google Doc, and people, you send the arc out, and someone reads it, and then they send it to the next reader, and so forth and so on. And then they came back to me, and people had written notes in them, and it was like getting a yearbook. It felt really great.
That's really amazing. Jessica has two questions. What are your favorite tropes in romance?
Okay. Forced proximity. I love when people have to be together. I'm just so like, yes, I'm so excited. I love enemies to lovers. I love when people hate each other, but secretly they're in love. Like, that's just, I'll read any enemies to lovers. I I don't love fake dating, but when it's done well, it's one of my favorite things in the world. I love a celebrity romance. I love oh my gosh, I forget the term. It's not cinnamon roll. There's like terms for the kind of like grumpy hero.
Yeah.
I love a grumpy sunshine. Oh, I love a grumpy sunshine. I mean, I love all like, there's not much that is not a favorite trope for me. I love tropes. Yeah,
Secret
there's not,
baby?
I don't think Secret Baby. Secret Baby, I don't love, but I do love it in fan fiction. I
Hmm.
don't know if I've really read a good Secret Baby romance. Well, I don't know if I've read a Secret Baby romance, but again, I did read a lot of Secret Baby fan fiction.
Okay, fair.
Brother's best friend, secretly dating the brother's best friend. Always gonna love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on.
Oh yeah. I guess the secret baby is the one trope that my romance book club doesn't love because it feels like there's not a good enough reason to keep somebody's baby from them.
Well, and is that more specific to historical, or do you think that's also comes up in contemporary?
It definitely comes up in contemporary, and you think
Okay.
"Dude, just because it was a one night stand, just because whatever it was,
No.
doesn't feel right.
Yeah, you shouldn't keep a secret. No.
No, not that kind of secret. So just our opinion. And what type of romance stories would you like to see more of?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I think honestly, there are people writing everything. I
Mhm.
think the real question is like, what would I like to see published more? Because it's not that there's not folks writing all sorts of different kinds of romance. Um, it's just, I think, what will people feel like might sell. And so I think just continuous representation in romance, both on the page and both on the author front, is like everything we should all be rooting for.
Lisa says, no secret babies. If you made a baby, he must change the diapers.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
I agree wholeheartedly. Um, So Rosa says, how does storytelling differ or compare between verbal telling, a la the beloved Forever 35 podcast, which we haven't even gotten to yet, and written form? Is there a thread that ties the art of the two?
Gosh, verbal storytelling. Yeah, yes, because verbal storytelling is really hard. I have not done a lot of it, but I have friends who like compete in the Moth and do a lot of storytelling shows. And I mean, stand-up comedians, there's definitely a structure. And I think that structure is evident also in written storytelling. Like you have to have beats, and the story the stakes have to get bigger. There has to be an inciting incident that starts it all off. But like, so I actually think structurally, these things are all very similar. If you know what makes a good storyteller, and what makes a good book, honestly, I think the parallels are pretty on the nose.
Jessica's trying to sell us on a secret baby story, but
I'll try it for sure. I will read anything you put in front of me.
So the author I was talking about with the baseball series is Kate Angell, Angell.
Oh, ELL. Okay, perfect.
She's
written down.
And before we get to this last question from Jennifer, I wanted to ask you about your podcast, because
Sure.
It is a different way of storytelling, of course. How did that start, and what impact has it had on your life?
Oh my gosh. It started around the time I was promoting.
For anybody who doesn't know about it, can you say what it is?
Of course. Yes. So I co-host a podcast that's called Forever 35, which is a very tongue-in-cheek reference to Forever 21, the store. And I co-host it with a very dear friend whose name is Dory Shafrir, who's also an author. And it's on basic terms, it's a podcast about self-care. We say it's a podcast about the things we do to take care of ourselves. What that means to us has evolved immensely, I think, through the conversations we've had on the show with listeners and with guests. But it really is about like getting to know ourselves and other people, and how do we take care of ourselves? Like, whether that's like figuring out how to get out of credit card debt, to like as simple as like taking a bath, to like community activism. Like it really, I think it's all those things. And it kind of came at a time where I was really stressed because my first book was coming out. And so I was, already kind of a ball of stressful energy. And I think we had just gone through a particularly soul-crushing time of the 2016 election, and then kind of all the just awful things that were going on in the country. And look, not like there aren't awful things going on now, but it felt at the time like we were just being, things were being thrown at us at all times. And I just noticed I would like, certain things would make me feel good. Like I just put on a hand cream for 2 minutes. It would help me kind of get back into my body. And so I think we just wanted an outlet that was like light and silly, and wanted to chat with each other about like, we're wearing linen pants, where should we buy linen pants? And, what's therapy like for us? And it has evolved, and the way it's changed my life is that it's my job. I get paid to do it. I get a salary. That's been bonkers. That was not the intention. And so the fact that people listened, and that allowed us to get advertisers, and that allows us to be paid. And then we were able to pay people to support the podcast. We have a producer and a project manager who support us and are part of our team. Like that's just been really, I never thought, that's not what I thought I would be doing. So it's been incredible. And the other kind of amazing part of it, and I don't even know if you asked me this, but I'm just gonna keep rambling. Like there's just this listener community that's like blown my mind, because I think anytime you make something, but especially both writing and podcasting, you're making it literally alone in a room, like this room. I'm here either talking into a microphone or typing. And so you forget that people are listening or reading or whatever it is. And so the fact that just like the most amazing, the podcast listeners are amazing. I can't even like wrap my head around it. Whether they're like helping us raise money for a giving circle, which helps elect local candidates in Pennsylvania, to like supporting each other. It's just been like, that part has been transformative. And the guests that we get to talk to, like, it's such a privilege. And it's just, all of it feels like, wow, I walked into the luckiest situation in my life. Not to say it's not hard work. It's a lot of hard work, but.
Mm-hmm. And what about the podcast format really works for you?
Sure. I love talking to people. I am inherently curious and outgoing. And I had years of training of interviewing celebrities. So I think I came into it with an understanding of how to move a conversation along. A conversation is actually very hard. It's actually hard to hold a conversation and to, listen to what the other person's saying and find, a nugget of information and build on that. And, you can see the best interviewers in the world are the best for that reason. So I think I had all this training that I didn't dawn on me would be helpful until it suddenly just felt very natural. And also I have a great, like, my co-host is one of my best friends and we have a really good working relationship. So that has been that's very useful.
Mm-hmm. So it seems to me like you have your fingers in lots of different pots. If you had to pick a favorite thing to do, what would that be?
Oh gosh. That's a great question. I honestly love doing both. I think I am a writer at heart. And for me, I've been doing this podcasting or interviewing or kind of that communication for so long that it's almost second nature. And the romance, writing is more challenging because I'm still kind of new to it. So in that way, it's very enticing, and maybe I would pick that. But I've always been somebody who always has a few things going at once. I think that gets back to my neurodivergent brain. So I don't know if I could do one if the other wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to the beginning where I said, I met you at the Boston Book Festival because the panel was amazing and you really stood out on the panel because you were able to engage and keep people's attention and things like that. Do you think that sort of atmosphere is really ideal for your personality and what you bring to the table, the panel?
Yeah, I feel very lucky that I love like chit chat. Like we could go all night and I would be very happy. And also, great. Do you want look, it's only 5:00 where I live. So we've got time and my kids have iPads, so I can go for a while. Yes, I mean, I certainly, like I mentioned, having done student government, I used to get up and give speeches all through middle school and high school, and I've always loved it. And then I had experience for like 10 years in New York City performing for 200 people every week. So I feel very comfortable having to be on the spot and then I interviewed people for another, billions of years. So yes, I am coming from that advantage for sure. Anytime it's a panel or a conversation, I love moderating panels. I've done that. That's always really fun for me. So yeah. And also I love romance. So I'm just psyched to be talking about it.
I can tell.
If we were talking about cooking, I would maybe be less pumped, but still try my best.
I feel like you're my soul sister. So
I can't. I'm coming. I'll be in New Hampshire this summer. I'm driving down to say hi.
You heard it here, people.
I know. I have to rent a car, but I'll figure this out, the logistics.
I will pick you up.
Thank you. Okay, done.
What is up next for you? I know you talked about your next book. Can you tell us anything about it?
Yes. Okay, so I'm waiting for notes from my editor. So I feel like the book could change, but it is a second chance romance between two adults who attended sleepaway camp together and who were kind of rivals, like frenemies a little bit, and then they are reunited in kind of, adult circumstances for one more week at their summer camp before it gets sold. And there's a bit of like a second chance love story, also like second chance life story. Like, I thought my life was on the right path, but actually, is this what I want to be doing? So I've always wanted to write a book set at a summer camp. It's set in New Hampshire, which is kind of where my soul place is. And I really writing it. It was a really hard book to write. And toward the end, I really fell in love with the two characters. And so I'm hoping that people like them. It's fun. It's sexier than In a New York Minute. For some reason, these two characters were like demanding to get it on the page. So it's a little racier, which has been fun. It's been a learning experience. But yes, we're talking a summer camp love story between a very driven perfectionist and like a lovable man child.
Not a cinnamon roll.
No, but I need someone to clarify, to like tell me these terms again. One of my writer friends was telling me like there's cinnamon roll and then there's something else. And then sometimes people will combine that to make a certain type of character.
Is that beta?
I cannot remember. Similar. It's like basically, I'm gonna have to text my friend Courtney. It's Courtney K, who's a great writer. You should all read her books. And she and I were talking about this. I think it was Courtney. I'm gonna text her after this and ask. And then I will make sure to update you, and we can get it out to the people.
That sounds good. And people in the chat are saying they can't wait for your next book, and that they, obviously we all love in a New York Minute. And any chance it could be a TV show or movie?
So it's really nice that people ask this. It is completely out of my hands. So if you are a person who makes movies or TV and you want to option my books, call my agent and do it. Yes, it's all reliant on, someone wants to buy it. I have a film agent who is the person who is in charge of selling it. I know that like people reach out, but it's really a matter of like making it happen. So to my knowledge, not optioned yet, but like, yeah, that would be amazing. I would love that. Both like, sounds great to have a little money come in that way. And also, I'm a big rom-com movie watcher. And so that's like my dream, like Hallmark movie, Netflix. I don't care what it is. I'm in. So yes, that would be a dream, but it's not not happening to my knowledge yet. So just, spread the word.
Well, we will do that, because I think
someone can start it. I think it would be, in my brain, I see everything I write as visually. So in my brain, I'm like, this is such a movie where come on, everybody, where are you? But, romance is still it's still a hard sell. Like, it's not, I don't think, it's great that it's gotten more, TV cover. Like, it's been on TV more. I think Jenny Han has really helped in that regard. So I'm really hopeful that we see more romance on all screens.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely think that Bridgerton, Outlander,
yes,
they've risen the bar so high. But they've also created a demand for more romance books turning into movies or TV shows.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all I want to consume. So I am there. I will be, I think what's always frustrating is that, the demand is there, but it's not always met,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it gets back to that conversation about whose stories are getting told and whose stories have, perceived value and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I did hear that Beverly Jenkins is, oh gosh, I can't remember which series is supposed to be a TV show, which is going to be fabulous.
Yes, that's right. Yes. And like some of Emily Henry's books are definitely going. So it's all good, yeah. It's like, it's one of my old favorite podcasts, Call Your Girlfriend, had this theory called Shine Theory, which is basically like when you shine, we all shine. And I think that's so true. So more romance everywhere.
And that's a perfect note to leave this on because I completely agree with you. So thank you, Kate, so much for doing this. It's been a blast.
This is such a privilege. Thank you so much for asking me and for supporting my work as a writer. It means so much to me. So I'm so honored. And like, I just also want to say, like, libraries are such an important, in all ways, as writers, as readers, as humans, they provide such an important service and have my whole life. So it means so much to get to have a book in a library. I can't even tell you.
Thank you again. Your books are never in the library because they're always out. So
well, that's true. That's like, really, I feel like I've made it. That's such a thrill.
oh, good. Well, thank you again. Thank you everybody for being here. And remember, you can buy signed books from Kate from Bank Square Books. I'll send that out in a recap email, so you'll have the link. And I hope you all have a wonderful night reading lots of romance and finding Kate, if you haven't read her before.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everybody for coming. This has been such a treat.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.